Internet connection problem. Don't tell me that. Okay, let me just call the studio right back. 1 second, guys. Don't go anywhere. Okay, I think we're good to go. Showtime. Welcome to the show, I think. I'm Brent Holland, and welcome, everybody. Tonight, folks, we're going to be looking at the top 10 reasons there was a conspiracy in the JFK assassination. Now, I gotta qualify this thing right away. These are my top 10. You've probably got your own, I'm sure. The ones I'm looking at, I'm going to tell you about tonight, are the ones with facts behind them. There's no speculation. There's no misinterpretations. These are based on facts. That's the ones I'm going to relate to you. So, it's a perfect night, folks. It is chilly out there. All of a sudden, the temperatures dropped here in Kingston again. It was quite balmy there for a little while. And all of a sudden, the temperatures dropped once again. Get the coffee going, get the tea going, get a beverage of choice, settle in your most comfy chair, and relax. And I want to encourage you, if you have your own top 10, write them in the comments below this on YouTube, or send me an email. Tell me what you think. Tell me what your top 10 are. I'd be interested in knowing. As always, I encourage everyone to make comments. The only thing is be articulate, be succinct, be nice. There's no reason to get red in the face, lose your temper, start temper tantrums online, yelling at people, calling people names, especially guests. If there's technical issues, it happens. And it looks like we're having some tonight. Top 10 proof the JFK assassination was indeed a conspiracy. Now, Google's definition, folks, of a conspiracy is, and I quote, a secret plan by a group to do something unlawful or harmful. That encompasses the Kennedy assassination, I'd say. The other definition is the action of plotting or conspiring. Once again, I think that exactly defines what took place November 22nd, 1963 in DEALEY PLAZA, which was the day the president was assassinated and also the place he was assassinated. Okay, number 10, and this one outrages me completely, and perhaps this should have been closer to number 1. And I want to encourage you to stick around for number 1, because when I tell you who confirms conspiracy in the JFK assassination, that's my number 1. Oh my goodness, it's going to rock you. Big time. You won't be expecting this from this person. And this person was an insider with the JFK. He was one of the New Frontiers members. He was integral in solving the Cuban Missile Crisis. When I tell you what he told me, you are going to be stunned. So stick around to the end. Number 10, destroyed files and evidence. Yes, indeed. This is from an article on the AARC website, the ARC's website, aarclibrary.org, Missing Records. And this is an article by Bill Kelly that was submitted on the 12th of October, 2017, and it is entitled Missing JFK Assassination Records, Revised and Updated, The Black Hole at the Archives. And he's got top 50 missing assassination records. I'm not going to list all 50, but I will give you the highlights of some of them. So once again, this article is by Bill Kelly, submitted October 12, 2017, to the aarclibrary.org. And I want to give a shout out to Alan Dale, my friend, of course, and fans of the show will know he's always coming on, giving the deep end of the pool stuff. This is on his website, or the ARC's website, I should say, that he's responsible for. Forgive me if I'm a little messed up tonight. I've got this horrible flu. Just horrible. I'm stuffed up. You could probably hear it. I can barely hear. My ears are popping all the time. And I got a fever. Oh, poor Brent. I hear you all now. Okay, off we go. As I try to lubricate my throat. The assassination files of the director of the ONI, Rufus Taylor, ONI, of course, Office Naval Intelligence, Rufus Taylor, whose office had undercover agents working in Jack Ruby's Carousel Club. These are missing, folks. Installing and maintaining the sound system, who reported in the only surviving document that Oswald was seen in the club. So the only surviving document by an undercover ONI officer stating very clearly that he was seen in Jack Ruby's club, as Beverly Oliver mentioned, that she saw him there as well. That document's gone. Isn't that special? Wait, it gets better. The ARRB, that's the Assassination Records Review Board, that came because of the 1992 film JFK. There was such an outrage after people watched Oliver Stone's movie JFK that they contacted their congressman. Congress got all upset and said, we've got to release some of these records that are still there. So that's exactly what had happened. So part of their job, of course, was to reach out to ex-Secret Service agents and contact the Secret Service for their files on the JFK assassination. So they contacted this fellow, James Mastrovito, the Secret Service agent responsible for the Secret Service records on the assassination, acknowledged to the ARRB that he culled, destroyed many records, and flushed into a food processor a vial of material labeled JFK Brain, Armed Forces Institute of Pathology with no repercussions. We're going to get into the details of that in just a second. The Secret Service also destroyed many records, including the advance reports for the Tampa trip after the JFK Act was passed by Congress, although copies of some of these records were found among the personal effects of Agent Gerald Blaine, of all people, who wrote the Tampa advance report. Do other agents also have copies of official records among their personal effects? Is anyone even looking? Now, here's something I had no idea about, but these records are missing nonetheless. Records of FBI wiretapping of Oswald while he was in police custody. Let me read that again, because this is a shocker to me. Records of FBI wiretapping of Oswald while he was in police custody are missing, as well as post-assassination tapes of Ruth Payne and Michael Payne and Marina and Robert Oswald phones, as reported by Irving Police Chief Paul Barger. So here's the big one, and this is sent from Malcolm Blunt. Are you ready for this? On January, and this is also found at the aarclibrary.org in the missing records section. January 4th, 1997, a woman by the name of Joan Zimmerman, then working for the Assassination Records Review Board, which I just mentioned, made the following report. Secret Service agent James Mastrovito, here he is again, once again, folks, who was in charge of the JFK files in 1975. He stated that he took charge of 5 to 6 filing cabinets worth of material stacked full. Mastrovito said he had purged, are you ready for this, between 2,000 to 3,000 files. He claimed that these files were of quote-unquote, his quote, mental cases who claimed that they killed JFK. Now, the most disturbing and repulsive is what he also did. Now, are you ready for this? He claims in 1969 or 1970, his supervisor at the Secret Service, Walter Young, handed him a vial. The label clearly stated it came from the autopsy at Bethesda. That's where JFK had his autopsy. Mastrovito said it contained a piece of President Kennedy's brain. Mastrovito said it contained a piece of President Kennedy's brain. This is evidence, folks. This is part of President Kennedy's brain. This is evidence of the most dastardly crime ever committed. And here he's got a piece of his brain. So this is a quote directly from the document, folks. Opening quote, Mastrovito said he destroyed the vial. Now this, once again, contains President Kennedy's, a piece of President Kennedy's brain. Mastrovito said he destroyed the vial and its contents, are you ready for this? In a machine that destroys food. Now, I could go on and on and on and make a whole thing about this, and I'm going to try and get Alan to come on the show at a future date, and we're going to go over this in much more detail, especially all the missing files and stuff. As I said, there are 50 of them, and once again, I'm going to reference where you can find this information. This is at the aarclibrary.org/missing records, and of course, that link will be on our website. So no problems there for all the stuff we mentioned tonight. It'll be there. That's number 10, all those missing files. Now, why would you destroy a part of the president's brain? Why would you do that? To cover something up. Why would you destroy any of these files? The records of the wiretapping of Oswald? Come on, in police custody? This is your information, folks. This belongs to the American people. I found I sound like Jim Garrison here. This belongs to you, and they just take it and throw it out. This is unbelievable. The death of the President of the United States. There's probably more stuff hanging around for the murder of Lincoln than there is for the president. Why? Obviously, a cover-up. These are facts. Here's number 9, the Carlos Marcello confession. And opening quote, here's what he said. "Yeah, I had the son of a bitch killed. I'm glad I did. I'm sorry I couldn't have done it myself." Now, those are the words of Carlos Marcello, the mafia godfather of Louisiana and Texas. And he was talking about the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. How do we know he said this? Because he was in jail at the time. And very often when you have a high-profile criminal, such as Carlos Marcello, a main mafia don, if you will, you put an informant in with him to share the cell. And this is exactly what happened. They put an informant in with him with a little radio. Inside the radio was a little microphone. And that picked up exactly the conversations that were taking place between the two. So not only do we have an eyewitness testimony to say that Marcello said he had a part in killing the president, but we also have the tape. So there's number 9. Now, why this has never come out to mainstream media, and they refuse to cover this, this is the FBI's file. Nobody has talked about this. Why not? Why not? They've got to investigate. This is unbelievable. You know, this is stuff that goes on all the time in prisons. They always put somebody in with a high-profile criminal to testify later on in a criminal situation, in a criminal trial. Yet Carlos Marcello gets a pass. He's talking about he just killed the President of the United States. Once again, yeah, I had the son of a bitch killed. I'm glad I did. I'm sorry I couldn't have done it myself. Hello? It's unbelievable, mainstream media, and they still won't cover it. That's number 9. Number 8, Jim Braden. Jim Braden, we're going to stay in the mafioso realm right now. Jim Braden, who was Jim Braden? Jim Braden was arrested right outside a building called the Daltex Building in Dealey Plaza. So if you will, think of Dealey Plaza as a triangle pointing to the left, if you will, the pyramid at the left. The Daltex Building was right across the street from the Texas School Book Depository, where the vast majority of mainstream people believe that that's where the shots originated from. The Texas School Book Depository, fired, of course, on the 6th floor by one Lee Harvey Oswald. Well, James Braden, oddly enough, was floating around at that very second when the president was killed. He was on the 3rd floor. He was looking for a telephone. When he finished with his telephone call, he was arrested outside because, of course, the police were rounding up people. So he told the police that he was inside because, being a very dutiful son, you see, he had decided that he was going to call his mom and say that, oh my goodness, the president's been assassinated. Now, this would all make perfect sense for Joe Average. Jim Braden's a mafioso. Yeah. He's a known mafioso. What the hell is he doing in Dealey Plaza at the very time the president's being shot? Furthermore, many people believe shots emanated from the very same building he was picked up outside of, the Daltex Building, on the very same floor he was walking along, which is the third floor. Coincidence? Okay. He was released, by the way, because he had just changed his name. And he was picked up with a lot of money on him, a lot of cash. Looks like he was making a payoff or something along those lines. Plus, he had a credit card. Now, credit cards today are nothing. But back in those days, they were unheard of. If you had a credit card, you were a high roller, period. Okay? They were not commonplace. Anyways, they released him. They only found out later that he was a known mafioso. Now, coincidence, right? Okay, so he's walking along the street. The president's shot. Goes to call his mom. Okay, let's go with that. Let's fast forward from 1963, November 22nd, to 1968. Los Angeles, outside the Ambassador Hotel, just a few blocks away. Who's picked up once again for questioning? Our very own Jim Braden. Coincidence? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that's evidence of a cover-up. Big time cover-up. That should have been investigated big time. Okay, that was number 8. Here's number 7, false Secret Service agents. Seconds after JFK's motorcade had bolted from Dealey Plaza towards Parkland Hospital in order to get the president as quickly as possible to the hospital, Dallas police officer Joe M. Smith raced behind the picket fence on the infamous Grassy Knoll. There he encountered a quote-unquote suspicious man lurking just behind the fence where many witnesses believe the fatal shots originated from. Now, Patrolman Smith, trained police officer, very important to remember that, trained police officer, pulled his sidearm from his holster and demanded to know what this suspicious man was doing. The man then took out a Secret Service badge, and he told Smith to keep looking, quote unquote. Interesting, right? Could be a Secret Service agent, whatever. Several other witnesses reported running into a Secret Service agent as well. The reason to focus on Smith is because he is a trained law enforcement officer. The same scenario played out moments later at the rear of the Texas School Book Depository. Remember, I just said that the official Warren report has Lee Harvey Oswald on the 6th floor, Texas School Book Depository. So at the rear of this very same Texas School Book Depository, Dallas Police Department Sergeant D.V. Harkness also runs into several, as he describes them, well-dressed men. Police were sealing off the complete area at this point, and that included, of course, the rear of the suspected shooting location of the Texas School Book Depository. It didn't seem suspicious then when these quote-unquote well-dressed men simply told him they were Secret Service agents. Fair enough. Nothing out of the ordinary, right? Okay, here's the problem with all the cases of these Secret Service agents spotted in Dealey Plaza in a nutshell. Are you ready? There were no Secret Service agents anywhere in Dealey Plaza. Let me repeat that for all the naysayers. There were no Secret Service agents anywhere in Dealey Plaza. They were all accounted for at Parkland Hospital with President Kennedy and Vice President Lyndon Johnson. Okay, one case, fine. 2 cases? Whoa. That's a bit of a red flag in 2 separate places, geographically separate places. The first one spotted behind the picket fence, exactly where many people felt that the fatal shots came from. The second one spotted where many people felt the shots came from as well, the Texas School Book Depository, and there was 2 of them, by the way. So we've got 3 unaccounted for, quote-unquote, Secret Service agents. But there's no Secret Service agents anywhere in Dealey Plaza. They're all accounted for at Parkland Hospital. So I had interviewed NASA physicist G. Paul Chambers, and his quote is, and I repeat, I had the chance to talk with G. Robert Blakey, head of the 78 House Select Committee on Assassinations. He said he checked every federal agency. There was no federal agents of any kind on that grassy knoll. So somebody was there with official credentials who no one wants to take responsibility for. Somebody who shouldn't have been there. So just who was impersonating the Secret Service in Dealey Plaza where the president had just been assassinated? More importantly, why at that specific location on the grassy knoll and the Texas School Book Depository? Both locations, as I've mentioned, are where people believe the shots originated from. What were these false Secret Service agents up to? Okay, so as an addendum, a fellow by the name of Malcolm Summers also raced up the grassy knoll just after the assassination, and when he reached the fence, the grassy knoll fence, he also encountered a man in a suit with his coat over his arm who sternly warned Summers, "Don't come up here. You might just happen to get shot and killed." This coincides with Secret Service agent Abraham Bolden's theory that a stolen Secret Service badge from his Chicago Secret Service office just may have been the badge in use by the false Secret Service agents in Dealey Plaza that day. Incredible story. That's number 7. Stick around, folks, for number 1, because it is going to rock you to your core. This is a fellow who confided that there was a conspiracy that was as close to the president as you could get. He was integral in resolving the Cuban Missile Crisis. He was part of JFK's team. He served with him for 11 years when he was a senator, when he was president. You want to hear who that name was. James Tague, number 6, and the magic bullet. James Tague passed away now. God love James. You know, he's a wonderful guy. I had a chance to meet him in 2013, and he passed away just a few months after that at the Dallas conference, of course, the Lancer conference. I had interviewed him in the show prior to that. And he's responsible for that magic bullet theory, and here's why. When he was just a young guy, he had gone down to Dealey Plaza. He was driving downtown. He didn't even realize the president was coming. But he had to go through Dealey Plaza because he had a hot date with a redhead, he told me. He ended up marrying her. Wonderful little story. Anyways, he couldn't get through Dealey Plaza, so he parked his car under the triple underpass in the tunnel. Not where the president was going to travel, but just adjacent to it. Got out of his car and he stood near the support for the triple underpass. And all of a sudden the president came by and everybody was waving, and I suspect he was waving too, and then the shots rang out. And James Tague was clutching his cheek when a police officer came up to him and said, "Hey, you're bleeding." James Tague had been wounded. He's the 3rd person wounded in Dealey Plaza that day. Right, you've got President Kennedy, fatally wounded. Governor Connolly almost died, but he was saved at Parkland Hospital. And James Tague. Many people don't know about James Tague. Yeah, and here's why. Because if it wasn't for James Tague, it would have been an open and shut case for the Warren Commission. But they had to invent the magic bullet. Here's how come. Nobody had interviewed James Tague from the Warren Commission. They were about to release their first report. There's going to be 2 reports for the James Tague because of James Tague. The first report stated that they had found 3 shells in the Texas School Book Depository on the 6th floor, the quote-unquote sniper's nest, and they had already made Oswald guilty of that crime. We'll get into that on another show, but for this show we're going to stick on James Tague. They had the first bullet entering Kennedy's back. They had the second bullet, of course, is a kill shot entering Kennedy's head from the back, and the third bullet going into Governor Connolly and causing all Governor Connolly's wounds. 3 shells, 3 wounds. Nice, neat little tiny package, right? Until James Tate comes forward and he says, hey, wait a second. Where did my wound come from? Uh-oh. So now you got at least four wounds with 3 bullets. Uh-oh, what are we going to do? Okay, we know one of the bullets hit James Tate. Got to cross that one off the list. We know one of the bullets was the kill shot that killed Kennedy, blew his head apart. Got to cross that one off. Aha, we've got 1 bullet left. And thus we have the magic Cirque du Soleil bullet, as I call it. Now, the Cirque du Soleil bullet, the magic bullet, the single bullet theory, it's all the same thing. It's all crazy, and it's all a pile of junk. Comes in Kennedy's back about 6 inches below his neckline. Now, miraculously, somehow, this bullet goes approximately 100 and, well, not 100, probably about 90 degrees upwards inside Kennedy without hitting anything, by the way. It doesn't hit anything inside Kennedy, but somehow it decides it's got to exit Kennedy's throat because we know there's a throat wound. Okay, now that's 7 wounds, 2 in Kennedy by this bullet, 5 in Connolly. You know, here's the crazy stuff, okay? If that's not crazy enough. The angle's wrong. So once again, if it comes in Kennedy's back, where the autopsy shows it came in, where his clothes show the bullet hole entered, it's at such a trajectory, it's going to come out the middle of his chest, not his throat, nowhere near his throat. Okay, so forget that right there. It's disproved. So why cover it up? Why do they have to do this, right? Okay, so we're going to get into that in a second. So what ends up happening? James Tate comes forward, says, listen, I got shot too. So they make this thing up. Now this bullet, CE399, Commission Exhibit 399, which I'm showing a picture of on TV, is hardly deformed at all. Now here's the problem with that. Many people out there listening right now have probably been hunting and they've probably shot an animal and hit a bone. What happens when you hit a bone with a bullet? It mushrooms, it shrinks, it distorts completely, or it explodes or whatever, and there's nothing left. Well, this magic bullet, folks, hits Governor Connolly's rib, breaks it, comes out of Governor Connolly's chest, and then breaks his wrist, his left wrist. Well, this is crazy stuff, right? Absolute crazy stuff. The bullet is found in pristine condition, absolute pristine condition. As a matter of fact, most people think that there's more fragments of that bullet inside Governor Connolly's wrist that is actually missing from the bullet. Yeah. So why the cover-up? Well, you've got a proof of it wasn't a conspiracy. So the only way to do that is to make sure Lee Harvey Oswald is guaranteed to be the sole shooter. Now, Lee Harvey Oswald's dead, right? Very conveniently. So he can't talk and tell who all he knew. Who shot him? Jack Ruby. Jack Ruby shot him, a known mafioso, once again. A known mafioso. That the Warren Commission, I'm going to arc back to what I mentioned before, that the Warren Commission said had no connection whatsoever to Lee Harvey Oswald. Yet, we have an undercover ONI agent who says, yes, he was there. But that document's missing now. A bunch of coincidences? Well, I'll leave that up to you. Not in my mind. That's number 6 on the 10 top top 10 list of why I believe there was a conspiracy in the JFK assassination. Don't go anywhere because we're getting close to number 1 now. Number 5, Sherry Fiester, crime scene investigator. This is the one that solidified it for me. I started this show 10 years ago in a small city called Sudbury as a lark, just something to do to keep myself busy. And I had moved there from a major urban center, Montreal, and had been a big fan of Coast to Coast with Art Bell. And I said, I'm going to do something like that, paranormal conspiracy. But the Kennedy assassination's always been very special to me and very close for a bunch of personal reasons. And I wanted to do something special that Coast to Coast never did, which was a special on the Kennedy assassination. I put 8 shows back to back to back to back my very first year of broadcasting, and Sherry Fiester was kind enough to come on the show. She was a senior crime scene investigator, sadly passed away way too early last year from cancer. Just a tragedy, absolute tragedy. She was wonderful, she was bright, she was Oh, just, full of energy and life. And, ugh, gets me sad when I think of it for sure. Sherry came on the show, and I was kind of on the fence. I didn't know which way to go. I'd read a few books, like everybody, most novices had at that point. And then Sherry came on with scientific proof that there was a shot from the front. Now, why is that important to our young listeners? Because the Warren Commission was the investigative body that investigated the Kennedy assassination. Their conclusion was Lee Harvey Oswald took all the shots from behind President Kennedy. Now, all of a sudden, we've got scientific proof from a crime scene investigator, which was never heard of in 1963, of course, folks. They just didn't have the technology, 21st century forensics. You've seen all the shows on TV, CSI this, NCSI, and all those shows. They use real science that real crime investigators are using to put people behind bars. Sherry did that. For 20, 25 years, she did that. She testified in court with her crime scene analysis and put people behind bars who most deservedly were supposed to be there. So she looked at the Zapruder film, that very famous film, Back and to the Left, that's in the JFK film. She examined that. The first thing she noticed at frame Z313 or Z313 is the blood that's coming out there is from a frontal shot. It's called blood spatter. And that's caused when a bullet enters, it pushes blood out. It's got to make room for the bullet entering. Yeah. So right there, we've got the proof that there was a frontal shot right there on tape. Now, why hasn't mainstream picked up on this? At least challenged it. When she goes to court, like she told me, people would challenge her analysis. They'd always be wrong because she's a senior crime scene investigator. But at least challenge it. At least bring it out in the open and challenge it. Here we have science proving a frontal shot, which means what? 2 shooters? Which means, by definition, a conspiracy. Or, by a miracle, there was 2 separate shooters that didn't know each other. That was number 5. So for more on that, you can check the archives, you can check her show, or just buy my book. All this stuff I'm talking about tonight is in my book. So JFK Assassination, from the Oval Office to Dealey Plaza. First time I've mentioned it, because I don't make any money off this book. I make $1.70. Hello? It cost me over $3,000 to make it. It's not going to happen. So there we go. So, moving on. Number 4, Dr. Robert McClelland. Why is Dr. Robert McClelland important? He's the surgeon who worked on JFK. The second JFK was rolled into Parkland Hospital. Why is that important? Because he saw, along with all the other witnesses that were there that day, the back of JFK's head blown out. The back of JFK's head blown out. Why is the back of JFK's head being blown out important? Once again, the Warren Commission said it was a rear shot. A rear shot would have taken JFK's face right off. Yeah. So a frontal shot would take the back of your head off. And that's physics. I hate to tell you, but that's physics. And that was proven also. I had a NASA physicist on who told me the same thing. That's physics. That's what's going to happen. The bullet enters at the front, right around here. I'm pointing to my forehead, in the upper right-hand quadrant. Goes right through the back of the head, takes the back of the head off, lower to the back of the head. And we know that because there was cerebellum. Cerebellum's only found towards the bottom of the head, and that had fallen out on the gurney. And Dr. Robert McClelland tells us that. So once again, we know there was a frontal shot. Why cover it up? There's a reason for that. Mark Lane had told me that he had talked to several people from the investigative unit of the Warren Commission, and they were told if they didn't find a single shooter, then that would mean a conspiracy. And right now, all the information flooding in was pointing towards the Soviet Union and Cuba. There would have been a war. World War III. So the Warren Commission kind of had their conclusion all set to go because they didn't trust the information. Johnson didn't trust the information coming in. He thought it was bogus. Don't forget, a year before that, they'd been through the worst crisis in the history of mankind, the Cuban Missile Crisis. We were that close to not being here. And the person I'm going to mention as number one was responsible for us being here. And I'll get to that in just a second. Back to Dr. Robert McClelland. So he and many other witnesses at Parkland Hospital, a lot of them, I'm putting the picture up right now, Aubrey Reich, who was the Undertaker, all these people saw the back of JFK's head blown out, which means a frontal shot. What does a frontal shot mean once again? Warren Commission stated it was only one shooter, Lee Harvey Oswald, from behind JFK. Frontal shot means two shooters at the minimum. I think there was more, but that's not for today. That's for another day. Two shooters at a minimum. That means conspiracy, without question. So why the cover-up? Well, I'll get to that maybe next week. I'll give you my reasons why there was a cover-up. So Dr. McClelland says, absolutely, the back of his head was blown. And he's not going to lie. He's not going to lie. Now, what's very, very creepy is Dr. McClelland had made a sketch of the back of JFK's head with the section that he believed that was missing. And when you put that up to some of the pictures taken at JFK's autopsy, they don't match. The back of his head indeed looks intact. So I'm showing that right now on TV too, how the two of them compare. Faked autopsy photos. That's where we're going next. And the x-rays. Last week, many of you know I had Dr. David Mantic on the show, and we were talking about how the autopsy x-rays don't match the autopsy photos, because definitely it shows, again, a frontal shot, because as David was explaining, he's an oncologist and he looks at x-rays all day long. And as he said, if he reads the x-rays wrong, the cancer doesn't come out, people die. Yeah. So he looked at the x-rays and he saw all these little particles at the front of the head. So what happens when the bullet first enters, it's kind of like water, if you will. It's, trying to draw an analogy here, it's gravity. The bigger pieces with the most momentum get pushed to the back of the head. And this is exactly what we see of the bullets inside the x-rays of JFK's head. And all the tiny particles are at the front, which means, again, a frontal shot. If it was a rear shot, we'd see all the tiny particles in the rear of the head and the big pieces at the front of the head. That is a definition of a frontal shot. Once again, frontal shot means what? Two conspirators at least. Okay, we're not talking about the who or the why. We're just talking about the two conspirators. Okay, so faked autopsy photos. As I said, Dr. McClelland, I'm showing it again. He made a sketch, the back of JFK's head blown out, the lower right quarter. The picture I'm showing right now, you can see as I overlap the two, they don't match, because the picture from the autopsy of the back of JFK's head shows it completely intact. So once again, why would they do that? To show that there was only one single shooter. In other words, the cover-up for conspiracy. So these are all facts I'm giving you tonight, folks. Complete facts. There's nothing, there's no perceptions here. There is no speculation. These are all facts that are backed up by the people that were there, first-person witnesses, scientists, and the actual documents. You ready for number two? Bum, ba-da-da, bum, 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 bum. You're so close now. Don't go away for number one, because that's going to rock the bejesus out of you. Number two, Kenny O'Donnell and Dave Powers. Who's Kenny O'Donnell and Dave Powers? Two of JFK's closest friends and aides. Kenny O'Donnell was in charge of JFK's itinerary, if you will. Dave Powers was an aide. They both knew JFK for 14 years. They were in the Secret Service follow-up car no more than 10 feet behind JFK's limo in DEALEY Plaza that day. They were both sitting in the front seat. They both said the same thing. They saw the shot come from the Grassy Knoll. They both said the same thing. The shot that hit Governor Connolly was not the same shot that killed JFK. Not the same shot that hit JFK. Two separate shots. Why does mainstream media not cover this? Two of JFK's closest friends and aides, been with him for 14 years, no more than 10 feet from the assassination, probably closer than anybody but Jackie, with a frontal view, in the Secret Service car, said they saw the shots come from the Grassy Knoll. What the hell? Have you ever heard of that before? I bet not. I bet there's a lot here I'm telling you that you didn't know. Once again, this is all backed up by facts. This is not just me making it up or somebody speculating, he may have said this. Tip O'Neill writes about this in his book, the ex-Speaker of the House. Tip O'Neill talks about his conversation with Kenny O'Donnell and Dave Powers about the JFK assassination. It was also confirmed to Lamar Waldron in his book, because his researcher, Tom Hartman, went and spoke directly with Dave Powers, and Dave Powers told him the same thing. I saw the shot come from the Grassy Knoll. Why did they keep it quiet? Aha. Here's the conspiracy. The FBI told them to keep it quiet for national security reasons. They were terrified World War III was going to come out. Once again, essential to remember, imperative to remember, put it in context of the time. Only a year before the Cuban Missile Crisis, we were so close, that JFK contacted Jackie, who was away with the kids, to bring the kids home and herself to the White House because he thought they were all going to die the very next day. That's how close we were. Could you imagine the president now, Barack Obama calling his daughters and his wife to come home because he felt that they were going to die from some kind of imminent attack, perhaps from North Korea or somewhere else? That's how close we were. That's how close we were. So when the national security apparatus tells you, guess what? We may end up in a war over this. You kind of cover it up because you're not sure. Kennedy already didn't trust the CIA. He didn't trust what he was being told from military intelligence, especially after the Bay of Pigs, because the CIA lied to him about the Bay of Pigs. They had done their own study. Alan Dulles had done his own study on whether it would succeed or not. The study came back and said time and time again it would not succeed. They never told Kennedy. They said, go ahead with the plan. Go ahead with the invasion. Could you imagine not telling the President of the United States, who's about to invade a foreign country, that the plan is not going to succeed? Not telling him that? And letting him go ahead and do it anyways? Outrageous. So he never trusted the CIA after that. Never trusted them at all. He thought they were just out there operating by themselves. I'm looking at the time. Are you ready for number one? Bum, ba-da-dum, bum. The number one from the top 10 reasons why I feel there was a conspiracy in the JFK assassination. Once again, I want to clarify that all of these are factual. I can back them up with documents, with interviews, and video. So no problems there. I'll go through them once again, just so you know, and then I'm going to get to number one. So number 10, folks, destroyed files. We were talking about the fact that one of the Secret Service agents had a vial of JFK's brain and destroyed it in a food processor. Yep, that's a fact. Decided to destroy a piece of evidence of JFK's brain. The President of the United States brain, he destroys. Conspiracy, without question. Why do you destroy that? Yeah. Carlos Marcello's confession, number 9. Yeah, I had the son of a bitch killed. I'm glad I did. I'm sorry I couldn't have done it myself. Does that mean the mafia was alone in killing the president? Absolutely not. And I'm going to get to that in a future show when I talk about the who and the why. Maybe even next week. We'll see. Jim Braden, that was the mafioso guy that was arrested outside the Daltex building in DEALEY PLAZA seconds after the assassination took place. Known mafioso, not when he was arrested and released. They didn't know that because he just changed his name. He was seen on the third floor where many people thought the shots emanated from. So is that a coincidence? Maybe. He told the police he was in there to use the telephone to call his mom and tell her there was assassination. 5 years later, 1968, he's arrested just outside the Ambassador Hotel a few blocks away for questioning. Why is that important? That's Bobby Kennedy's assassination I'm talking about, June 5th. Yeah, that's right, folks. Same guy. Two brothers assassinated in the same place. Coincidence? No, not for me. False Secret Service agents, again, there was 3 false Secret Service agents spotted. One was behind the Grassy Knoll fence. The other 2 were behind the Texas School Book Depository, both places where people felt the shots came from. All 3 were identified by police officers trained. One behind the Grassy Knoll showed his badge. Why is that strange? Because there's no Secret Service agents there in DEALEY Plaza. Then we have James Tague. We mentioned that, the magic bullet. Sherry Fiester, crime scene investigator. Dr. McClelland and his head wound, faked autopsy. And the number 1, Ted Sorensen, JFK's speechwriter and closest aide, who wrote the letter to Khrushchev to get him to back down. What he told me confirmed conspiracy. Why? I have reached out many, many times to mainstream to cover this. Ted Sorensen confirmed conspiracy in the JFK assassination. You can find those quotes and all that information in my book. All this is factual, folks. None of it made up. There you have it. My top 10 reasons why there was a conspiracy in the JFK assassination. I'm Brent Holland from The Brent Holland Show. I'll see you all next time.